Well, let's get started on phase 2 here of our watercolor stars or starry night picture. I'm using a slightly smaller round brush this time, and it's the same style, just a little bit smaller. And I have a little water pan. I'm mostly doing that so you can see what I'm doing with the water, because I'm going to be doing a little bit differently than the washes I was doing last week. In fact, I'm going to show you how I'm going to use what's called a graded wash here, and we're going to practice it a little bit. So I've got a clean paper, and I'm going to just dip in, get some clean water on my brush, and then let's start with the red. And what I want to show you that I'm doing here is I'm going to lay down just a little line of color, and then I'm going to come in with clean water, and I'm going to pull that color down and feather it out so that the further down I get, the clearer the water gets, or clearer the color gets, if you will. And let's do another line of red here just to show you what I have in mind. We're going to use this technique in making the clouds. You won't notice this kind of a gradation as much because we're going to be working on paper that's already painted and colored. But this is a technique that you'll use a lot in watercolor. It's called dry brush technique. I'm working on dry paper, and here I'm going to give a little rounded edge as if we were doing a cloud. I'm not going to do the whole cloud idea, but I'm coming in again with clean water, and I don't want to soak it. I just want enough water there that I can pull that color down until it fades out. Now let's try, I'm going to clean that brush out a little bit, dip back into the clean water, and try another line of orange. And again, just with clean water, I'm just going to pull that color down. There, I laid in a little bit more color than in the previous one, so I had a little bit more to pull down as I did that feathering out there. Okay, well, let's try a little bit of yellow this time. And this is something that you want to practice as much as possible before you actually try it out on your painting itself. So just get a clean sheet of watercolor paper and make as many lines, and if you want a little variety, you can always like draw a circle and try to make a sphere out of it. You would use the same technique. You would just put the color along one part of the sphere and then pull it around so that it gets thinner and clearer. Alright, so we've gotten our blue, and let's try one last line here. I guess that last line was purple. I clean the brush out. Again, I'm using dirty water, but I don't particularly care right now. It's not going to affect so much what I'm doing. Normally I'd be dipping into my big gallon jugs, but for this purpose it's not bad. And that's it. So let's move on and start our painting. Well, let's begin on the orange part of the background there. I'm going to just come in, for starters, just with some clear water, and I'm going to wet down some of this, and I'm going to loosely go in the shape of some cloud tops, I'm going to pull a little bit of orange in and add some of that to this, but this is going to be mostly water and a little bit of orange around the edges. I'm going to be pulling a little of that down. Again, because there's already so much pigment in the paper, you're not going to notice just a ton of difference here. But I wanted to kind of strengthen the orange around the top edges of the clouds. And then, again, I want to wet down the clouds as we go down a little bit. One is going to give a hint of cloud shapes. I'm not looking for just a tremendous amount of detail here. I just want to suggest clouds. So for me, this process is going to involve using a fair amount of just clean water, a little bit of paint along the edges particularly, and then I'm also at times going to blot. And so I've got just a baby wipe here. I'm going to blot and take some of the excess pigment out so that we have a variety of value in here. We've got some dark, we've got some light, and just want to give that nice cloud-like feel. Again, I talk about paper a lot, and again, I'm using for this 300-pound Arches cold press watercolor paper, and because the paper is so heavy, I can go back in with these watercolors. I'm going to add in a little yellow here now. You really can't see a whole lot. This yellow is so transparent that it's not showing up much against the orange. But what I was saying about the paper is the heavy watercolor paper gives me the freedom to come back into this color with some water and just be pretty free about it without worrying too much about blossoms or stains or whatever. So that's again why I say as much as possible, if you are going to really do a lot of watercolors, get the best paper you can. And although I work on Arches 140-pound cold press paper, sometimes my preference is the 300-pound. It's expensive. I pay about $14 a sheet for it at Hobby Lobby, but I always go and use my 40% discount, so I get it marked down, and then as you see, I'm using a fairly small piece, and this paper comes in sizes of 22 by 30 inches. So I take one sheet that I get for about $9, and then I cut it up into 16 smaller sheets, and so it's really a pretty good value when you figure it out. Okay, that's our back line of clouds. Now we're gonna move on a bit and work on those yellow foreground clouds. So let's move on. Now to create the yellow cloud layer in the front, I'm going to do the same thing that I did in the back. I'm just going to come in with a little yellow watercolor, and going to lay some of that in for starters. I'm also going to bring in some water, and again use a little bit of that dry brush technique, but I want to establish at least a yellow line here. And again, it doesn't stand out just a whole lot at the moment, but in a bit we're going to do some wetting and blotting, and we'll make those clouds appear a little bit stronger. So get your yellow paint and come back in and strengthen the cloud shapes. Again, I'm just pulling that color down into the yellow at the bottom, making sure that I've got just enough water. And I come in and just keep working it. Now I'm going to come in and blot. I'll lift some of that color out. I want to leave the yellow edge that I painted in, that I strengthened, but I want to lighten the area in front of it. So just again, a paper towel will work, but I like baby wipes because they don't tend to leave a lot of lint and just leftovers. So for me, baby wipes work really well. And thankfully I have a granddaughter, and she's only about 18 months, and so we have a lot of baby wipes around the house, and sometimes they just don't end up getting closed, and when they dry out, I say, may I have those? But even if we didn't have a baby around the house, I think I'd probably baby wipes and let them dry out, because I haven't really found much else that works well. Now I want to get a clean piece here so I can have a nice clean corner as I try to lift out a little bit more color. There we go. And don't forget, you can turn your paper. If you need a better angle on something, then just move it around until you have the angle you want. Okay, got a little lighter area there. And I'm going to take a little yellow and strengthen some of it. And again, just try to work those cloud shapes until you're happy with them. And I'm pretty close to done with this stage. And you can play with it and play with it and play with it, but sooner or later you have to come to a point where you say, okay, I think I've done enough, and I think that's kind of where we are now. So that's phase 2, which is our clouds. Come back next week and we will do trees.